Welcome back, Pokemon trainers. It's been a very exciting day here at the World Cup by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato. We started the day off with Team China and Team Spain tied 0-0. Now we end the day with both teams tied 3-3. Whoever wins this next matchup will be moving on, along with their teams, into the finals to face off against Italy next week. So this is going to be an absolutely incredible set. If you haven't already, make sure to grab a snack, grab some water, do what you got to do now so you don't miss the game coming up, because it's going to be super duper exciting. My name is Gabby Snyder. I'm still joined here by Stefan Mott as we are going to bring you through this last round. Stefan, are you as excited as I am?
I really am. I mean, we know the teams are tied 3-3, but this looks on paper to be an extremely even match. Both of these players with a 5-2 record in this tournament. This is going to be a good one. I'm really excited.
Let's go ahead and take a peek back at the previous matchups we've featured today. Here, as you can see, Guillermo Castilla winning Game 1, Ren Changfu winning Game 2, Wang Yuxiang winning Game 3, Victor Mendina winning Game 4, Lin Guli winning Game 5, Eric Rios winning Game 6, and now it is down to the last two players standing. Antonio Sánchez facing off against Tan Qingyang, which should be really exciting, as we saw a preview of their teams in between rounds. Let's go ahead and take another look at them now, as Antonio Sánchez first up, getting top 8 in the Players' Cup 4 Global Finals. 5th place in the Players' Cup 3 EU qualifiers, top 12 in Players' Cup 1 Global Finals. A very accomplished trainer running a team of Xerneas, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Urshifu, Amoonguss, and Volcarona. It's looking a little bit familiar there.
It's been a while since we saw this team. But yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I mean, we saw when we see the items, we're not going to have a team preview for Game 1, unfortunately, but when we see the items, it'll be interesting to see if all of that is the same. But overall, this team did excellent work for Eric in the last set, and Antonio will be hoping that it will do just as good work for him in this one.
It'll be a bit of a different matchup, though, as we go ahead and take a look at Tan Qingyang's team over on China's side of the field, winning the Jolly Breloom Tour number 44 earlier on in the year. But, you know, this matchup is going to be interesting because of the Lunala, the Incineroar, the Stakataka especially, Tapu Fini, Regieleki, and Serena on Xinjiang's side of the field. These aren't Pokemon that you commonly see in a Series 10 team, and I'm very curious to see especially how this Lunala and Stakataka are going to match up against a Xerneas.
Yeah, Lunala's been kind of in and out. It's never been a mainstay throughout the entirety of the Series 10 format, but there have been players popping in with it. And especially in this kind of a format, when you're only coming in for one matchup, if you know, oh, my opponent doesn't tend to use Yveltal or something, then maybe that's where you pop out the Lunala team, especially if your opponent is running something or tends to run teams that would struggle with a less conventional restrictive. So it'll be really interesting to see just what the game plan is here. We were talking a little bit in the break as well, but there's a lot of stuff here that does pretty well into the team that he's facing off against. Obviously, Tapu Fini is a great way to just shut down that Amoonguss. The Regieleki is going to help out a lot against the Urshifu Rapid Strike, which on this team tends to be scarfed, so it's not even going to survive a hit. The Serena is really good into the double fake out. Stakataka can easily one-hit KO Volcarona and Xerneas. So there's a lot of stuff on this team that could give China the edge.
And you bring up a really interesting point, which is something I don't think we've touched on yet today. You know, with these team tournaments happening week over week, you can look at the past teams that your opponent has run, and you can sort of make counter picks in that regard. So, you know, it's just seeing how tough of a matchup, at least on paper, Stakataka has against Xerneas is, to me, an indication that Qingyang might have gone and done that research against Antonio. And possibly prepared this team exactly for this matchup, which would make things very exciting to watch play out in this final round.
Yeah, and I guess we'll go into the game and see what those leads are going to be for game number 1. Everything on the line here. We've got an Incineroar plus an Xerneas versus an Incineroar plus a Lunala. So it's Fake Out Geomancy versus Fake Out Trick Room, potentially.
And a Trick Room would certainly be the move to use if you're worried about your opponent's Xerneas getting that speed boost, outspeeding, and then one-shotting all of your Pokemon with Moonblast. I think we've seen Xerneas do that enough so far in Series 10 that has to be one of Qingyang's top concerns going into this game.
This is a really interesting turn 1 as well. Obviously, the fake out potential exists. You could fake out the Xerneas, but you know, the Lunala is a ghost type, obviously, so it's immune to those fake outs from the opposing Incineroar. And if Qingyang decides to be a little bit greedy, he can even try to parting shot into the Stack Attacka here, just to get himself as many Trick Room turns as possible for the Stacky Boy. So it's just going to be a straight swap, in fact, going into that Stack Attacka.
There he is. All of his blocks are ready for battle as Xerneas goes for a substitute. A good indication that Antonio saw this Trick Room coming. A parting shot will lower Lunala's special attack by 1 stage, which will certainly make those Moongeist beams deal less damage. But seeing that Stack Attacka revealed and looking at the Pokemon and the items that Antonio has brought into this game, sending in something like the Rillaboom or the Amoonguss with the imminent Trick Room coming from Qingyang's side of the field would certainly be advantageous for Antonio, as Rillaboom can fake out the opposing Stack Attacka if this Xerneas wants to try and buy some time, maybe even sneak in a Geomancy even under the Twisted the Dimensions, or could possibly go straight for a knockoff into Lunala. Shadow Shield is still active as it has damage, but certainly would not appreciate losing what could be a power herb.
Yeah, so an interesting thing to note, actually, is that we did see that the Amoonguss is Koba Berry, which is different from what Eric was running. So it's not a complete copy of the other team. Both of these players have made their own minor changes to fit their own needs. So in this matchup, that's not likely to be much of a big deal as far as the Amoonguss held item goes, but it just means that we could see a couple of surprises in the rest of the lineup that might go against what we saw in the last set.
And it's those surprises really that keep things interesting, as especially if you're someone watching from home and you want to try some of these teams, but maybe you're like me and I don't know, you don't really think that Koba Berry is a good item on Amoonguss. That's a lie. It's fantastic, but you know, just for the sake of argument, it's okay to go in those little changes and try things out and see what fits your playstyle best. For now, though, this Xerneas is going to be taking a turn to protect itself from a rock slide on the opposing side of the field from that Stack Attacka. Will connect with the Rillaboom to bring it down into about 60% of the health and reveal a Life Orb. Lunala will be slower than the Rillaboom, going to go for a Meteor Beam, get that crucial boost in its special attack and be able to deal a ton of damage. Unfortunately, though, Xerneas will protect and stop that. Knockoff from the Rillaboom will improve the Life Orb as soon as it was revealed.
It's a nice crit, does a little bit more chip. It's going to help out. And Stack Attack is not a Pokemon that's going to go down in 1 or 2 hits for Antonio's team, so any additional chip that you can get is good. The Meteor Beam boost there is nice. It sort of counteracts the parting shot that we saw earlier, so we essentially have Lunala back at neutral here. But the knocking off the Life Orb is really interesting information. A lot of people will tend to run safety goggles on Stack Attacka, but opting for that extra damage instead. So that's a cool thing to note going forward into the next games. But for the rest of this one, it's not going to be particularly relevant having been knocked off.
No, this is great information for Antonio, though, as you see that Amoonguss lurking in the back of his party. If he's looking for a way to stop Trick Room in a Game 2 scenario, or possibly in a Trick Room reset later on in this game, that makes it so much easier for that Amoonguss to go for those spores.
Yeah, it does for sure. It essentially means that Qingyang can't really rely on Stack Attacka as a Trick Room setter. It's going to be more of a Trick Room sweeper, which is how he's using it in this game already. Now, the Geomancy is going to be coming in. I guess the question first is whether or not Rockslide at -1 is able to break the Xerneas, but it breaks the Incineroar's bones with that critical hit. Down goes the Incin, and that is a massive deal, as Antonio is going to be pretty upset about how that went down.
Getting the beast boost in defense as well. Some great information for Antonio, as Nala free to go for a Psyshock into the Xerneas after the Rock Slide. That is going to be enough to break the substitute. So great information for both these trainers. And Antonio, I think, has reached the critical part in this Trick Room game where there is enough turns of Trick Room remaining so that he doesn't have to worry as much about going for the Geomancy. Certainly it's something you want to think twice about when you're staring against a Stakataka whose Gyro Ball is certainly a knockout at this point. Possibly after -1, Xerneas could survive it depending on how it's trained, but this Xerneas is eyeing the end of that Trick Room with glee and waiting to just go on the offense.
Yeah, something that is a little interesting to consider is that the Lunala did show Psyshock, which to me seems like a deliberate attempt to counter Team Xerneas. Of course, Psyshock is a special move, but the whole gimmick of Psyshock is that it targets your opponent's defense instead of special defense. So it's essentially going to ignore the defensive part of that Geomancy boost on the Xerneas. Really, really interesting tech there by Qingyang. And that may end up coming into play. Now, this turn's going to be a little awkward. We've got the Amoonguss here. We know it's not Goggles' stack, even if it hadn't been knocked off. And it's definitely not Goggles' Lunala, as we saw Meteor Beam come in with the Power Herb. So something may well go to sleep. And the worst-case scenario for Antonio is that he burns a turn of Trick Room if they both protect.
Exactly, but knowing Lunala and Stakataka don't necessarily carry Protect, that is definitely something to keep in mind. But hey, if you can switch in a Tapu Fini to set up the Misty Terrain to ensure that your Pokemon aren't going to sleep, that is another way to just keep your Pokemon as safe as possible. Gyro Ball smashing into that Xerneas, barely missing that KO as a Spore is unfortunately rendered useless thanks to that Misty Terrain. Moonblast from Xerneas into Stakataka also barely missed.
I am a little surprised that Gyro Ball wasn't able to pick up even at -1, but the Xerneas just barely being able to survive. It may be the fact that the Stakataka is getting defense boosts from Beast Boost instead of attack boosts a little bit painful for Qingyang there, but overall still a pretty good turn. His Stakataka is still alive, even if it's not particularly healthy. And he didn't really lose anything from switching out the Lunala because it had been parting shotted earlier, so it's not like it still had the Meteor Beam boost either. So overall, Qingyang is going to be super happy with the development of that turn.
Yeah, but there are only a couple turns of Trick Room remaining at this point, and Rillaboom is more than happy to reset the terrain, but Qingyang making the call, withdrawing the Tapu Fini to keep that Misty Terrain safe for later. The Intimidate down on the Rillaboom here also certainly will be helpful for Qingyang, as Antonio using this turn to protect and keep the Xerneas around for one more attack. Rock Slide will be able to connect with the Rillaboom and will do a decent amount of damage, all things considered.
Yeah, so a really nice decision to go for the Rock Slide there instead of the Gyro Ball. It's the last turn of Trick Room, so it's a super obvious protect from the Xerneas. One of those situations where it's like, it's a super obvious play, but you still go for it just because the reason it's super obvious is that it's a very, very good play. Now that we're out of Trick Room, I wonder if Xerneas lives a fake out. I'm actually not sure.
It's a tough call. I mean, and even if Antonio tries to flinch the opposing Incineroar, that really will only give him the ability to class the Stakataka slot, and the Xerneas is at such low health. It's very curious to me how this is going to play out, knowing that it seems like things are in Qingyang's favor to get rid of that Xerneas as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I like the switch here. I think it's a pretty obvious fake out from the Rillaboom, from the Incin. So yeah, from the Rillaboom into the Incin. So going for that switch is nice. The Moonblast just to remove the Stakataka, also nice. It's low on HP. Pretty much anything could KO it right now, but you still just want to make sure it's gone. You don't want to take a hit from either Rock Slide or Gyro Ball there, really, because whatever hits that Xerneas is going to take it down. So
Yeah.
the win condition here for the Xerneas is it's +2 speed, right? The question though is can Antonio get through that Lunala this turn? Because it will have Shadow Shield active. You could deactivate that with a Grassy Glide potentially, but there's a Fake Out on the field now, so Trick Room should essentially be guaranteed.
Yeah, that was a very smart switch there, allowing the Incineroar to come back in to guarantee the Trick Room here, if that's what Qingyang is going for. A lot of times these Trick Room teams really do take advantage of the second Trick Room, and you can see why. Antonio's Pokemon are weakened, and yes, you know, there is that Amoonguss in the back, but then you really don't have to worry too much about it, knowing you still have Misty Terrain.
This Lunala is really awkward now, right? One of the awesome things about running Meteor Beam is that it consumes that power herb. So a lot of these Pokemon who run the Assault Vest and a Dark type coverage move, just like, you know, you run after the Caloric Shadow, but the same double weakness applies to Lunala. But with Meteor Beam being using up the power herb already, Knockoff is going to do significantly less damage. So it's really going to be down to the Xerneas to try to take down that Lunala.
Well, Amoonguss will be by its side when that turn comes. For now, Moonblast into the opposing Incineroar, gets a critical hit and is for the knockout. No attempt at a fake out from Xingyang's side of the field, but that Lunala will set up Trick Room.
I really like the switch out there. He's giving himself another opportunity to put in the grassy terrain. So this Tapu Fini is not going to be able to do much against the Amoonguss in about 2 turns. So even though we're back in Trick Room, we're in a bit of an awkward spot for Qingyang, and you know, you gotta wonder why no fake out there. Was it maybe a plan for maybe he was counting on an attempt to knock out the Lunala with Xerneas? I'm not sure. I feel like fake out there would have made a lot of sense, but now that the Misty Terrain is up for what will be the last time, Rillaboom can just switch in and guarantee Grassy for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and something that it looks like Antonio is opting for, which is, you know, a scary play to make, knowing that Xerneas has all those boosts, is going to be switching in the Rillaboom now so that Amoonguss is free to go for those spores immediately. So I do really like this play from Antonio, as putting the Pokemon to sleep on Xingyang's side of the field really is his best play to try and find time to get through these remainder of these turns. Also, the Lunala will be unable to deal damage to the Amoonguss, and now you also have the Rillaboom staring in opposition of this Tapu Fini with access to Calm Mind. You know, we've seen Calm Mind Kyogre do some fantastic work throughout the tournament this weekend. You know, you give it to a bulky water type Pokemon and it can just really exceed. So this is really the great opportunity for Antonio to go on the offense.
Yeah, another really awkward thing to note is that Amoonguss should not be one-hit KO'd by a neutral Psyshock. So even if the Lunala gets a turn 1 wake up, it's going to be really tough to get out of this bind. The Rillaboom does amazingly into both of these Pokemon. It either does massive damage to the Tapu Fini or removes the Shadow Shield from the Lunala. And actually, we're going to see the Shadow Shield removed here by Grass Knot. So the Moonblast comes into the Amoonguss, which is, I guess, predicting a potential switch to Xerneas. But I think we actually saw Knockoff as the move of choice, so the Lunala should at least survive this turn.
It will, and it will take another knockoff for the KO onto the Lunala. I think Antonio is trying to set up his win game so that it's 2 grass-type Pokemon against the Tapu Fini, and, you know, at the end of the day, there's only so many Calm Minds you can get in if you're staring down a Pokemon like Rillaboom.
The question now becomes whether or not the Lunala is picked up by a Grassy Glide. Shadow Shield, of course, is gone, so Grassy Glide will do twice as much damage as it otherwise would have. If the Lunala lives, there might still be a win condition, but it's going to be close.
It's going to be close, and Antonio also double target Lunala with try and ensure the KO, which he is able to get. Now this Tapu Fini will have the opportunity for a blast against the Rillaboom this time, but fails to do enough damage to knock it out, and as a result be taking a Grass Knot plus a Grassy Glide of its own in this upcoming turn.
Yeah, that looked like it might have picked up if the Rillaboom was Miracle Seed, but as we know, it is an Assault Vest Rillaboom, and that was just confirmed for Qingyang if he wasn't sure before. There's still time for a Spore to come down from the Amoonguss, and even if the Rillaboom gets removed from the field, even if we see the Xerneas removed from the field, I just don't really see how the Tapu Fini sees the game out against Amoonguss.
I mean, we don't know what item it's holding yet, I think. I haven't seen any leftovers activation, but I could have mixed it up with the grassy terrain as well. So maybe Fini has access to some magical item that could help out here, but you're absolutely right. It's going to be a tough win, and it's going to be even tougher, I think, now that, you know, the Amoonguss is free to... It looks like it's even going to target a Spore into this Tapu Fini, so if Qingyang was trying to stall out this game, maybe get some more information about how much damage this Tapu Fini can do to Antonio's Pokemon, this is going to be it. This last Muddy Water, good confirmation for us that it has access to it, as those accuracy drops can make or break games, but not this game, as with Tapu Fini going to sleep, it's pretty easily going to be Antonio clean up and Spain in the lead, not only in terms of this round, but in terms of the top 4.
Yeah, that's a really tough game for Qingyang. You've got to think back to that turn where he set the second Trick Room. If he'd gone for the Fake Out, things might have been extremely different in this game. And in a high-pressure situation like this, where you're 3-3, you're in a team setting, you're in a Game 7 in the semifinals of probably the biggest team-based tournament of the year. That's a very tough position to come back from mentally. So Qingyang's going to have to show some mental fortitude here in game number 2. But I'm sure that if he can manage to bring it back, a win would go a long way towards a potential confidence boost going into a potential game 3.
I mean, that would just be fantastic, wouldn't it? Game 3, after both teams are 3-3, like, that is just peak Pokemon excitement right there. And I think that Qingyang does have access to the tools to go for it. I mean, we've seen the Sakataka, we've seen the Lunala with Psyshock. Like, this feels like a very calculated team and a very calculated approach to this particular matchup. So I'm hoping that we'll see Qingyang pilot it a little bit better going into game 2, just so we can see how it's going to function under ideal. I want to get that game 3. I want that hype. I want that storyline.
So the one way to look at it, right, is I feel like most people do this, including myself, when thinking about our own games. It's very easy to hone in on the mistake. It's very easy to think about that and go, God, I should have just fake out it. Oh, man. But the other side of that coin is that was only a big issue because Qingyang was able to put himself in a position where he was at like a 90% win condition, right? So he's already shown us that his team and his piloting skills are more than capable of getting himself into a winning position. It's just going to be about seeing it out from that position this game if he can at least get back to where he was before in this game number 2.
Yeah, and it looks like Antonio's taking a moment to sort of think through his matchup as he's trying to lock into the same 4 Pokemon we saw in game 1. It's nice to see the full team lineup as well, knowing that the last 2 Pokemon are the leftovers, Volcarona, which I think you touched upon a little bit. Yep. Along with a Choice Scarf for Shifu, but for this game in particular, neither of those Pokemon will be making an appearance as we get this game 2 started.
All right, is there going to be any adaptation at all? It looks
Not
like
yet.
Incin and the Lunala come out, and it's just going to be a Rillaboom instead of an Incin on the side of Antonio. So the same general situation, just the Rillaboom switching in instead of that Incineroar. Qingyang, pretty happy with how the game started for game number 1, and I think he's just going to look to do the same thing here again.
Yeah, and I really like this adaptation of the Rillaboom over the Incineroar, because now he guarantees that he has access to the fastest Fake Out user on the field. He also gets access to Knock Off immediately, which will make it so that Lunala won't be able to Meteor Beam again, assuming the Rillaboom isn't flinched by a Fake Out. It's a tough choice for Qingyang to make, because on the one hand, if you flinch the Xerneas, you stop Geomancy. On the other hand, if you flinch the Rillaboom, protect yourself from knockoff. But Serena switching onto the field for Qingyang, revealing an adaptation that he's made, blocking priority attacks, but there's no priority to be had, as free to go straight into that Geomancy.
I like that. I'm wondering, like, there's a big part of my brain that's thinking, is he protecting a roar from that Incineroar?
Well, we're gonna find out momentarily as we get the Salt Vest reveal on that. No yet. Instead, it is going to be a parting shot, bringing that Xerneas down to just a single special attack boost and giving Qingyang the ability to switch in the Stakataka, who is going to love the speed boosts that Xerneas has gotten.
Yeah, it's a little awkward since we're not in Trick Room right now, but I really love the adaptation for the lead from Antonio because he basically forced a situation where, even though we didn't see the fake out come in from the Incineroar, even if he went for the fake out Trick Room play, he's looking at that going, okay, you're either losing your Power Herb or you're letting me Geomancy. Choose. And as things ended up turning out, he gets the Geomancy up. Parting shot onto that Xerneas is a pretty big deal. A lot of the Xerneas calcs are to kill things at +2, so going down to +1 can give your Pokemon a significantly higher or longer lifespan if you're on Qingyang's side of the field. Opting for the sub here, you turning out on the Tsarina, I like this too. He's probably just going to bring in that Incineroar, get that double Intimidate down, and we'll see what the Stakataka goes for, if it's going to go for a Trick Room itself, or if it's just going to go straight into that Xerneas.
Well, if Stakataka goes for a Trick Room, it's going to be staring down that Amoonguss, which, as we know, loves to put Pokemon to sleep and really was critical in the early parts of that Game 1. Qingyang going for a U-turn of his own on that Serena, giving him the opportunity to send the Lunala back in, the final Pokemon that he's brought. It's going to be the Lunala variant again as Stakataka wraps up the turn with a Gyro Ball to break the sub on Xerneas.
Overall, pretty good for Antonio here, I think. He's in a position where he's threatening a Spore onto the Stakataka. We know it's Life Orb. He knows it's Life Orb. And I guess we could see the Tsarina switch back in on that side, but it's very, very awkward because I mean, there needs to be a double switch in order to be super safe against Spore, right? And a double switch just gives the Xerneas time to really just continue mowing down opponents in its face. So Rage Powder looks like the call here. I do like that. And Moonblast may well two-hit KO Lunala, even at +1 instead of +2. So the first one would potentially break a Shadow Shield. Second one might be able to KO, but gonna go after the Stakataka instead. Bit of an interesting decision here. The Stakataka shouldn't take an insane amount from this.
It shouldn't, but it certainly is the more threatening Pokemon on the field, as it appears to be a two-hit knockout after that little bit of chip that was on it from the previous turn. Lunala taking advantage of the Power Herb while it has access to it with a Meteor Beam. We know that's going to deal a big amount of damage to this Amoonguss like we saw in the previous game, but I think the bigger question is, what attack did Stakataka go for, and will that be enough to pick up the KO onto this Amoonguss? If it's a Gyro Ball, it's not going to do much damage at all, but it's still able, Life Orb, to get that KO.
That's a massive deal. That's an absolutely massive deal here. The Lunala, I do have to wonder, right? The Geomancy's up, the Xerneas is at +1. Does like a Grassy Glide and a Moonblast pick up the Lunala? If not, then Trick Room here is just a super nice play. But if it does pick up, then that obviously becomes an extremely risky play. So I'm interested to see whether the Lunala finally tries to get that Trick Room going, or whether we just see it continue to try to apply more pressure. The Amoonguss being gone, though, is a massive boost to Qingyang.
And that's also some really good information, because I think that Gyro Ball wouldn't have done that much damage, Life Orb aside, if that were a minimum speed Amoonguss. That seemed like it was a bit on the faster side.
Yeah, true. So that's very, very interesting to consider as well. And it's going to be an Incineroar here instead of the Rillaboom. So wanting to get that Intimidate down onto the Stakataka here. It's also running Throat Chop, so we've got two potential Dark moves on this team for that Lunala to contend with. And in this case, it's looking like just a parting shot into the Lunala, trying to remove the boost from that Meteor Beam.
Well, Stack Attacker won't be sticking around to take that Attacker as Qingyang sends in his own Incineroar, confirming the 4 Pokemon that he's brought to this game. Xerneas will be attacking next with a Moonblast, but thanks to the earlier parting shot, will not be able to pick up the knockout, just barely missing out and revealing that Incineroar also does not carry safety goggles, instead opting for a Citrus Berry. A parting shot of Antonio's own will special attack of that Lunala, who will be moving last this turn, which means it's about to get a little bit slow in here.
True. It does make sense that you'd want to run a Berry on Incin on this team, just because you have the Tapu Fini, so it sort of frees up that option. Psyshock coming in, so that actually just means that the Lunala is naturally slower than the Incineroar, which is kind of interesting. Usually Lunalas, they have extremely high base speed, but you're never going to run them like that because you want to have that Trick Room. But that kind of shows that the Lunala is straight up min speed, which is interesting. Rillaboom coming on in, though. This is still a very awkward spot for Antonio after losing that Amoonguss, right? Because we saw there on that Incineroar, the Moonblast did not pick up the KO anymore. The Moonblast probably will pick up on the Tsarina if I had to guess, because it lost its Assault Vest already and took a little bit of damage, but you can just see how much less of a threat the Xerneas is than it otherwise would be.
Rillaboom with that knockoff to follow up on the Moonblast into that Lunala. It's able to hold on. Incineroar on Xingyang's side of the field will be going for a second parting shot into the Xerneas, bringing it back down to neutral special attack, but still leaving it on the field with the speed boost and with the special defense boost that Geomancy brings.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see the Stacker come back in now. Yeah, so if there is a Trick Room, so Trick Room comes on down. The Rillaboom will not be able to pick up the Stack Attacker with a Grassy Glide. We already know that it's getting defense boosts, which means that it has higher defense than attack. It's pretty common to run Stack Attacker with a minus defense nature and 17 defense IVs just to make sure you get the attack boost, but that's not the case here. So we know that Stack Attacker is going to be able to get an attack off. And the question is, what does he go for here? We know it has access to Rock Slide. Xerneas could go for a Protect here, but it's a read-heavy turn, right? Because from Antonio's side, do you predict that Qingyang predicts your Protect and then go for an attack? Like, it becomes a little bit weird like that, right? So we'll have to see what the play is here. But the lack of grassy terrain means that the Lunala is free to get another attack off as well. There's going to be no Grassy Glide pressure into that slot.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the Rillaboom was forced back out onto the field right as Grassy Glide ended is a really tough spot for Antonio to be in, as Lunala, happy to have accomplished Trick Room back up on the field, will be switching out into the opposing Incineroar, who will once again be intimidating the Rillaboom on Antonio's side of the field. Xerneas will be protecting this turn, so if we do see that Gyro Ball from Stack Attacker, it will not be doing any damage and will give Rillaboom the opportunity to target a knockoff into that Stack Attacker to remove the Life Orb.
I actually still really like that turn for Qingyang. He basically said, okay, I'm either going to KO the Xerneas, or with the switch out, I'm going to get Incin back in, which will allow me to parting shot the Xerneas again. And we already talked about how Xerneas really wants +2, because even at +1, it misses a lot of KOs. It's going to be at -1, Gabby.
And that's why it's leaving the field, Stefan.
Yep.
I mean, when you think about it, while the special defense boosts are nice, a majority of Xingyang's Pokemon will be dealing damage on the physical side, and really with Trick Room, I feel like you're just not doing yourself any favor, as these Gyro Balls are just going to deal so much damage with your speed boosts.
So much.
So you're better off just switching that Xerneas out, sending your Incineroar in to take the Gyro Ball and the from your opponent, and then bring Xerneas back in immediately, protect and help you stall through the remainder of Trick Room, as there's only 2 turns remaining.
It's a similar situation to the last turn in a way, because it's kind of reversed, I guess, because the Stacker can Gyro Ball you, the Incin can parting shot you. Which one are you going to fake out? The other option is to just protect the Xerneas here, but I think this turn you don't want to protect it, because you want to have Protect available for the last turn of Trick Room, especially because you have fake out pressure here. But it's looking like Antonio disagrees with me, and that's why he's in the semifinals and we're out.
Well, Incineroar is also out of the field. That is, he's still going to be around for later on in the game as Qingyang sends in the Serena and Incineroar.
True, that is a... Didn't consider that option.
Yeah, well, you know, with these revolving doors of Pokemon, you just got to keep the door spinning long enough, and eventually things will shuffle around into your favor, or I'm sure these two players believe. Xerneas will also be taking a bit of a slower turn with the Protect, and Stakataka revealing Body Press to deal damage to that Rillaboom could also explain those Beast Boost defense boosts as well, as that will power up that attack.
Yeah, Stakataka really is the problem here. We have to consider that the Xerneas being at -1, it probably, like, since Staka's not taking Life Orb recoil anymore, right? So there's a decent chance that it lives another Moonblast. This is a weird situation, Gabby. I have no idea how this game is going to shake out.
I think the thing that I would pay attention to here is where things are when Trick Room ends. I feel like Antonio has enough Pokemon remaining that he can stall out the remainder of Trick Room without too many worries. It does help that a intimidated Gyro Ball will no longer threaten an out on Xerneas thanks to the fact that it forwent its speed boost. But if Antonio is able to keep all of Xingyang's Pokemon within a KO range from one of his own attacks as Trick Room expires, I feel like that will allow him to just like domino effect, you know, knock out 1, 2, 3, 4 and then power through the game.
That is definitely a possibility. One thing that I kind of would love to see here is to see the Stakataka switch out and then the Serena U-turn back into the Stakataka. I think that could be really cool. It's unlikely that the Serena is being targeted right now, but instead opting for a Body Press into the Xerneas, going for just a little bit of chip damage. I think reading the Incineroar switch there, there is going to be a U-turn coming in though, and that's going to dish out decent amount of damage. I mean, Serena, we think about Serena as like a good answer to water types like Rain and just an Assault Vest user and the Fake Out Denier. But even when it's hitting things neutrally with non-stab, that's still pretty respectable damage, especially in a game that's now moving so slow that chip is essentially going to decide how this shakes out.
And Moonblast as well, going to target down that Stakataka for a bit of chip of its own. It looks like Qingyang has both of his star attackers back out onto the field, but they're just at so low health. You can't help but wonder. They are going to be guaranteed to attack, as we know that the Lunala is slower than the Incineroar, but just as I say that, Trick Room will be ending. Seems like Antonio has a pretty straightforward path to victory at this point.
Yeah, I think the idea there might have been that he could Trick Room with both of them and only one of them would go down, but that Moonblast damage proving to be pivotal, just showing how much that chip damage matters in this game. And we just see Antonio clicking into the other Pokemon, just clicking into the ones on Xingyang's side, because if they don't protect, and as you mentioned earlier, neither of these Pokemon really tend to carry protect very often, they're both just going to go down.
Exactly, and I like how he split the attack coverage on that turn too, as it appears that Moonblast will be going into that Stakataka and Flare Blitz into the Lunala, possibly trying to predict a Serena switch in. It is going to be the Incineroar instead, so but still, knowing that the Xerneas is targeting down that Stakataka with that Moonblast, that means Intimidate will not this damage roll whatsoever, and Stakataka will no longer be a threat for Antonio in this game.
Yeah, I think the Flare Blitz at least shouldn't kill, but this is a very, very painful position for Qingyang, because as we saw, the Lunala's at about 10%, the Incin's at about 10%, and Serena, I was singing its praises on doing decent neutral damage, but it is not exactly the Pokemon you want to go toe-to-toe 1v3 against a Rillaboom, an Incin, and a Xerneas. So maybe Qingyang has some magic that he can make happen here. He's got a Fake Out on his side this turn, but what can he really accomplish with that? The Lunala is gonna just go down if it gets doubled into.
Exactly, and I think all Antonio has to do to ensure his win condition is go for that double. Yeah,
I guess choosing whether or not he wants to reveal Throat Chop, but I don't really know what difference it makes at this point. It's a really unfortunate. This has been a really, really cool set. Xingyang's been making a lot of really cool, pretty good plays, but unfortunately for China, Antonio has just been able to just position so beautifully The game started off very, very slow, and it looked pretty good for Qingyang, getting the parting shots down on Xerneas, living a couple of those Geomancy Moonblasts, forcing the Xerneas out even. All of that looked fantastic, but if there was one more turn of Trick Room, right, Gabby? It's always that feel where it's like, so close. If there was one more turn of Trick Room, maybe this is a very different game. But I mean, that just goes to show how well positioned Antonio's team was. He took advantage of every single turn to stall out the Trick Room both times it was on the field. And at the end of the day, now sees himself in what can only be described as a no-lose scenario for Antonio.
I think it also helps that Xerneas is just one of the scariest restricted Pokemon to face off against in a situation. I mean, here we were with like a perfect storm of anti-Xerneas tactics. You know, you had the Stakataka, you had the Lunala, you had the Room. But yet Xerneas was able to persevere and bring Antonio and Team Spain, with a little help from a burn at the end of the day,
Salt in the wound, Gabby.
into the finals against Team Italy next week. It's going to be a Europe versus Europe showdown.
It sure is, and really, I'm not going to pretend that I'm some kind of oracle here. I feel like the vast majority of people, myself included, looked at this bracket and said, I mean, there's potential for upsets. There's always potential for upsets. A lot of these teams have really good players, but it's likely to be Spain and Italy in the finals, and it looks like it is going to be Spain and Italy in the finals. Antonio dealing so well with that Game 7 pressure. I can't imagine how uncomfortable it is to go in Game 7, the semifinals of the World Cup, see that team preview, and realize this guy counter-teamed me. And yet he still pulled it out. Just a fantastic display of just the best Xerneas play that you could possibly see. Just so well played.
And that's really, I think, why Xerneas has persevered as a very scary threat throughout all of these years, throughout all these different formats. Geomancy and Xerneas are just a very strong combination. And I think despite any efforts possibly made to try and weaken Geomancy, it's just such a powerful move. So congratulations to Team China for making it this far in the tournament. It was so great to showcase all 7 of your games this week, as you know, China is a region that we don't normally get to see play. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you all so much for allowing us to watch these incredible games. But if we want to jump over into the bracket, we know who's going to be moving on to play next week. It's going to be Italy versus Spain, and truly a exciting run all the way up to finals from both sides of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, neither side had an easy way. Italy was able to take out France first, and France, of course, essentially taking part in the Japan knockout, being one of the teams that knocked them down in that second group stage. France, no slouch at all. Italy just takes an impressive win there. They managed to beat Switzerland as well, and then managed to win against South Korea. So that was, you know, it was a tough run for them, but they managed to make it happen on the left.
And on the right, Spain beating out Chile, followed by the United States to make it into this round of top 4. And then, as we all just saw, beating China to make it into the finals. And I'm really excited to see these two regions face off in the finals, as I think that we're going to get some nice rivalry, not only in terms of like the World Cup, but also, you know, in terms of European pride. You have two regions that are, all things considered, very close geographically, duking it out for the title of this tournament. So I cannot wait to see how that's going to play out.
It's also up to Spain now to prevent the year of Italy from completing. When we saw them win at football, we saw them win at singing, and now we're seeing them win at Pokemon. So they're trying for the hat trick, but at this point, the rest of Europe's just kind of getting bored of watching Italy win all the time. So I'm going to be a little biased and cheer for Spain.
You know, I think I will go for the Triple Crown then, and I will root for Italy, because what is more important than in soccer, in singing, and in Pokemon? I mean, those are the 3 most important things in the world. I would love to see them get that 3 win.
That's very accurate to my life, Gabby. I appreciate that.
Anytime. That's what I'm here for. But yeah, I think on that note, let us know in chat who you're going to be rooting for, as we will be streaming a bunch of these games next weekend here over on the Victory Road channel. You're not going to want. And, you know, I just want to take a moment as well to shout out all the people behind the scenes who have been making these streams happen. The Victory Road team has done a fantastic job of putting this production together, and I'm so happy that we got to bring you all of these exciting games. And also, hey, shout outs to Elgato for making this happen as well. You know, they've provided a lot of gear that has really feasible for a lot of us casters. So thank you so much for your support. And I think that's going to be it until next week. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you real soon. Take care.